Hey there, YouTubers. Had a viewer ask if it's okay to run your PC outside of a case. And so we're going to talk about that today. Positives, negatives. There's, I believe, a lot more negatives than there are positives. But let's go ahead and look at an example. This is probably one of my top two favorite computers on this channel. i9-12900, and you can see it is not obviously in a case. It is on a Asus Prime Z690P D4 Wi-Fi motherboard. We've got the big old Noctua D14. It's not the biggest one. You'll see that in a little bit. But a couple sticks of RAM, graphics card, blah, 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 right? Power supply sitting over here. Now, positives about this. What are the positives? I didn't spend money on a case for it, right? Cases, you know, sometimes you can pick a cheap one up for $25. Sometimes they cost $100, $150 or more, right? So not necessarily a cheap thing, but there are a lot of benefits to having a case. And, you know, for most of you, I think having a case is the way to go. For me, why do I necessarily have this computer out of a case? See all the different FPS benchmark videos that get done on here, right? A lot easier to switch this graphics card out with these guys if it's in that configuration. Easier to change out a lot of other components on here as well, just sitting here. Pretty easy to get this CPU out of here when it's sitting like this instead of being in a case. Any of these components, I can switch out the power supply relatively fast, okay? So for most of you, this does not really benefit you. Now, some of the headaches of putting, you know, certain motherboards into cases that are rather confined, obviously didn't have that. Whether you want to consider that a benefit or not is another story. Now, to get something like this to work, of course, you need all the components except for the case. But you also need something like this gizmo to turn it on. You could use a flathead screwdriver and just touch the positive negative terminal together, assuming you have your power supply in the on position. That will turn this on, okay? Doesn't always work the first time. Sometimes you got to sit there and clank away at it until you make that connection. But so negatives of this. Well, this looks like a total freaking disaster, right? You know, I obviously got to do some house cleaning here, but we've got hard drives connected to this thing, you know, cables all over the place. We've got this stuff, trip hazards in some situations. So what are some negatives besides the eyesore that you may see here? Basically a trip hazard right here, right? If I came through here, I could, you know, rip this computer right off of the table and put it onto the ground and probably break quite a few components. That's not a good thing, you know, for having this outside of the case. So I luckily have been, you know, pretty safe coming around the corner. Guy was just noticing the carpet needs to be swept in here. What a pigsty. Uh, but yeah, getting back to this video, folks. This graphics card also, you see that? It's kind of hanging to the side. Not such a positive thing, I would say. This is a armor plated PCIe PCIe slot there, so maybe it can handle this a little bit better, but long term, is this a good thing? I don't know. We're going to get, you know, quite a bit of dust on these components in this configuration. This thing throws off some heat. You know, for the most part, this thing is cooling quite well, but you know, I've always been concerned about the box it's sitting on. Right, this is a motherboard box that it came in, that particular motherboard. And if you were to have a fire with your PC, right, that's not uncommon to have that happen. If you're using really good components, you know, most likely it'll never happen, but sometimes people, you know, skimp and buy cheap Chinese stuff, maybe a cheap Chinese power supply, whatever. Maybe your graphics card, something could happen in there. Um, what if that catches on fire? And guess what? We've got this combustible right here. Not necessarily a good thing for that. That case does also, keep a lot of the cables, not necessarily the ones on the IO shield side here, safe from animals and other things you may have that might chew stuff up, right? So I have to keep the animals out of here because they like to chew stuff, and that would not be such a good thing for them to chew on the cables that make up my computer. So in a case, for the most part, your computer's more protected from spills. If you were to spill a soda or something else on this here desk, better chance that something might get into the computer. Beyond that, folks, it definitely works. You've seen two examples. We might have just a few more examples here of PCs that are outside of boxes. So yeah, you can do it. Do I recommend it? I actually do not recommend it. It's one of those things where sometimes we do things because it's easy. Definitely easier for me to do this. But if you want to protect your investment, put a case on it and make sure it stays safe. Final note, here is another type of gizmo that'll turn on your computer. Of course, all you need plugged in is this guy here, the power switch, right? The rest of this stuff is basically what you have on a computer case. So you don't need to hook these things up. But yeah, that's going to do it. I hope this answered your question. Like I said, you can do it. Do I recommend it? Not necessarily. For somebody like myself, once again, easy change out of components. For most of you guys, you don't need that. Obviously, this is a lot simpler to slap together than if you have in a case. But there are all those dangers, right? We have components that could fall off the counter. We have components that can get damaged. So thanks for checking out the video. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.